Hello, my name is Nicoleta Cinpoeş, and I'd like to talk to you about Shakestivalling in the New Europe, my input in the Visegrad project. My work began with charting the landscape of Shakespeare festivals in Europe, focusing on the European Shakespeare Festival Network, which was established in 2010. My research acknowledges that this network has been crucial to putting festivals on the Shakespeare tourist map, and has enabled what I call Shakestivalling, a term I coined for this form of Shakespeare production and tourism generated through Shakespeare festivals. In the second stage of the project, I worked on potential paradigms to consider when discussing European Shakespeare festivals as distinct both from other types of theatre festivals and from North American Shakespeare festivals. Since its inception, the European Shakespeare Festivals has been an organisation open to interest in all things Shakespeare, as its goals, summarised up here, point out in the network's constitution. The network has been an important arena for Shakespeare production, and has grown to mean access to European subsidies and grants for individual and partnership ventures in an attempt to create a lifeline for financially starved world of arts and theatres in countries of the former Eastern Bloc and even further afield. Outreach has been on its agenda, not just as a buzzword that looks good on grant application, but as a shared commitment to the respective local and regional communities, and especially reaching the otherwise underprivileged and socially excluded populations. Within a decade of its activity, the network has grown in membership from 5 founding members in 2010 to 14 at its highest, and currently sits at 12. Its activities have also diversified, with events that have involved thousands of actors and creatives and reaching tens of millions of spectators and readers across the European circuit the network has established. By way of offering you some travelling, here's my guide to Shakestivalling. The first festival of the network was Shakespeare Festival at Globe Noise, founded in Germany in 1991, and whose venues is a replica Globe theatre. Craiova International Shakespeare Festival was founded in Romania in 1994, soon after the Romanian Revolution, and it is a festival that happens every 2 years in a city away from the capital, and a city interested in Shakespeare production as a rep theatre as well. The International Shakespeare Festival in Gdansk has formalised its festival existence in 1997, having run a few other events, the Shakespeare Days, prior to that. It is an annual festival that coincides with the Dominican Fair at the beginning of August. The Shakespeare Festival of Catalonia, in comparison to Gdansk and Craiova, for example, it's a festival that takes place in a very small town in Catalonia. It relocated to the capital of Catalonia in 2008 and finally moved to Barcelona in 2013, but only lasted there for 2 editions, and unfortunately was the first casualty of the network. It ceased to exist in 2015. The Yerevan International Shakespeare Theatre Festival in Armenia joined the network in 2004, and it's a festival that brings to it its focus on one-person shows in particular, and the training of the creatives, directors, stage designers and actors. The Gyula Shakespeare Festival in Hungary was launched in 2005, and it's a site-specific event held in the only surviving late medieval fortress in Central Europe. It is a festival that takes place midsummer, and within a 6-week-long arts festivaling, a week is dedicated to Shakespeare. The Summer Shakespeare Festival at Ostrava in the Czech Republic It's a festival that joined the network in 2008, and it's one of the 4 Shakespeare Castle festivals across the Czech Republic and Slovakia. It happens in a purpose-built open air stage, which embeds spectating in heritage site specificity. The Shakespeare Festival at Hamlet's Castle, Kronborg, in Denmark, is another 2008 joiner. It was hosted by the Hamlet Scenen, a resident subsidized theatre, and it focuses primarily on staging Hamlet. The Shakespeare's Globe in London joined the network in 2012, primarily because of the Globe to Globe 7-week season of the World Shakespeare Festival it organized in 2012, and the 2-year world tour of its production of Hamlet between 2014 and 2016. Unlike the other festivals in the network, this is a festival that focuses more on its production traveling outside, whether in person or is streamed live and encore shows, than on bringing international Shakespeare production to it. Nevertheless, it gave rise to 2 other initiatives that led to 2 other festivals being founded. One is the Bitola Shakespeare Festival in Macedonia, which was founded in 2014, and it's linked to the Bitola National Theatre, the theatre that was invited to contribute a production to the Globe to Globe. It also uses a local attraction, the Herakleia Theatre, which is 2 miles away from Bitola. Ithaca Shakespeare Festival in Serbia was founded in 2014, again after the director, who is the founder of the festival, brought a production to the Globe to Globe. Like Macedonia is interested in artistic exchanges within the country as much as with international Shakespeare producers, if you want. Unlike the Bitola Shakespeare Festival, this is a site-specific festival, as it is located on the Danube bank in the very scenic Villa Stankovic. The Shake Nice Festival in France was opened in 2014 at the initiative of director Irina Brook, Peter Brook's daughter. It's interested in hosting international productions of Shakespeare, but equally important, if not more important, in a program of Shakespeare freestyle for teenagers. So it has a very clear community and educational ethos. It is a practice that it has introduced to other festivals in the network, and we hope that practice will continue, especially since this festival has ceased to exist in 2019. And finally, the York International Shakespeare Festival, which joined the network in 2015, when it organized a major cultural event in York, which focused primarily on Shakespeare in the North, as opposed to heavily subsidized London and Stratford-upon-Avon Shakespeare, rather than international cultural exchange. It takes place every 2 years, and it has a very unique feature, a pop-up rose theatre. The first part of my project mapped out the Reach Festivalling across Europe along with the festival network as a structure. And in doing so, it acknowledged the unity of diversity within the network. All of these are Shakespeare festivals, but some are community festivals, others destinations, some are site-specific, others are civic enterprises, some are heritage tourism, others focus on training creatives, some are annuals, others are biennial, some are city festivals, others are events within wider arts festivals, and so on. The network, I argue, is also a form of agency, which is conveyed discreetly or collaboratively by its members. The network's geographic span and 1 decade of activity confirms Shakespeare's dynamic role in intercultural celebration, mobility, and mediation, all newly earned freedoms at key remappings of Europe immediately after 1989, as in the case of the older members of the network, after the European Union expansion in 2004, and at recent Shakespeare anniversaries in 2014 and 2016. Finally, it legitimizes Shakestivalling in Europe as a phenomenon that has been gathering momentum, energy, and agency. These potential paradigms are of interest in conceptualizing the complex and fluid phenomenon of festivaling and its cultural and social and political impact. And these are worth considering in the context of both Europe's transformations. In terms of Shakespeare's role in regional sociocultural exchanges, not least given the tensions between the new and neo-European movements that threaten Europe's and the EU's unity with ripple effects for the rest of the world. Secondly, notwithstanding the positive impact of Shakestivalling, it's worth examining the impact festivals have on the production and circulation of staged Shakespeare. As festivals move past the stage of seeing the network as a structure which facilitates exchange and catching up with international Shakespeare, it's worth looking at the network in its role of effecting change in areas other than the artistic and the cultural, and perhaps in the broader civic, educational, and socioeconomic domains. Besides democratizing theatre growing, how does the Shakespearean economy drive local and regional regeneration and development, as well as inclusion? Does this experience cause displacement, social and cultural, as the pace of gentrification is accelerated by the regular program of events? In terms of Shakespeare productions, some questions that are worth asking include whether or not individual artists, companies, or theatres consider, when planning a production of Shakespeare, the European market and festival audiences. How do export productions compete with local priorities of a particular artist, of a particular company, of a theatre, or the national repertoire? How does the network circuit affect the rhythm of theatre seasons and their annual plans? What are the implications of sustained exposure of productions, some of which take 3 or 4 years to tour the entire network circuit? What are the wider implications of international collaborative productions, which, despite their best intentions and attractiveness, both financial and artistic, may become time and resource draining, some of them being also short-lived because they're not sustainable locally in a rep theatre and they are rather cumbersome to tour. Festivals in Europe affect curating Shakespeare both at the national level and at the level of the network, not least due to facilitating much mutual exchanges as well as competitiveness and competition in an unregulating neoliberal market. Questions worth asking are, were it not for the existence of any of these 12 festivals, how many indigenous Shakespeare productions, and of which plays in particular, would be staged otherwise in a particular theatre, in a particular language, in a particular country? Does Shakestivalling reinforce the Shakespearean hegemony? What kind of experience does a Shakespeare play afford that a non-Shakespeare play may not? I'm also interested in looking at Shakestivalling and the role it plays in recasting hierarchies, such as between the written text and the performance, between English-speaking versus foreign repositioning of all non-local Shakespeare as foreign, including English ones at international festivals, indoors versus outdoors, high culture versus pop culture, physical versus intermedial performance. As a practice, Shakestivalling offers productive exploration of much debated concepts as well as of more recent ones. I'm interested in reversed othering and the Shakespeare tourist gaze, as by its very nature, Shakestivalling invests growing communities of willing strangers, local and global, in the roles of producers, consumers, and end users. Is this blurring of boundaries between producers, consumers, and end users, is it emphasized further in the digisphere when some, if not all creatives, actors, technicians, and spectators are virtually there? Finally, presentness and the digisphere are two areas of interest in exploring Shakestivalling as it's happening now and might happen in the future. Would going digital incentivize Shakespeare tourism with a smaller carbon footprint, a more moral tourism? Is live festival Shakespeare threatened by the streaming of Shakespeare performances globally? Or is online streaming the new mode of festivaling in the case of Shakespeare, as the pandemic seems to indicate? In the absence of liveness and mobility, what do festivals morph into? And some initial examples suggest that the outcomes could be productive exercises in digging deep into festival archives, very rich and unique resources, but they've been important in testing the potential of digital Shakestivalling, as in the case of a number of festivals like Dance, like Craiova, who ran digitally last year. Participation moved from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of viewers. Positives include not having to negotiate performance space and to deal with simultaneous productions, plenty of seats, excuse me, free of charge. The negative side effects include fewer shows on offer, shorter productions of 1 hour to 90 minutes as opposed to 3 and 4 hours. Copyright and funding matters, impacting adversely on the variety of productions on offer. And as an early kind of finding, that as audiences grew more international at these digitized festivals, festival programs grew less international. I'd like to leave you with Ross Derrett's thought on festivals seen to build social capital, and in community development terms showcase the strength of a community at play and demonstrate its capacity to cope with external stresses and disturbance as a result of social, political and environmental change. And to that, you would agree, changes brought by events such as the pandemic we have experienced. And the next stage of my research is to unpack Shakestivalling with a view to theorizing Shakespeare festivals as a phenomenon in its own right, at the intersection of Shakespeare studies, tourism, anthropology, urban planning, sociology, and theatre history.